The average American home owns 300,000 things. The person who lives here owns 94. Same year, same planet. Completely different relationship with their own life. Here's what nobody tells you about Japanese minimalism. It has nothing to do with owning less stuff. Meet Jake. He makes good money. He has a nice apartment, a full closet, a packed calendar, Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And every Sunday night, he lies in bed with this gnawing feeling that his life is happening to him, not by him.
Jake is not alone. 72% of Americans say their clutter causes them significant stress.
We spend $1.2 trillion a year on self-storage, more than the entire music and film industry combined, just to store things we don't use in buildings we pay for, so we never have to look at them. But here's what I want you to sit with for a second. What if the problem isn't that you own too much stuff? What if you're using stuff to fill something else entirely? There's a concept in Japanese culture called ma. It doesn't translate cleanly, but the closest English equivalent is meaningful emptiness. Japanese architects don't leave empty space because they ran out of furniture. They design the emptiness on purpose, because the empty space is where your mind gets to breathe. Neuroscience now backs this up. Your brain has something called the default mode network. It only activates when you're doing nothing. That's when you process emotions, form memories, have your best ideas. We've engineered it out of our lives completely. American culture has a core operating belief. Empty equals wasted. Empty calendar, you're lazy. Empty counter, you're a minimalist pretending to have taste. Empty moment, pull out your phone. Busy became the status symbol. And we wonder why we're exhausted. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, cool. Another video telling me to clean out my closet. That's not what this is. Because here's the thing. Decluttering is a $15 billion industry in America. We buy the organization bins, we do the 30-day challenges, and 3 months later, the closet looks exactly the same. Not because we're lazy, because we're trying to solve a psychological problem with a physical solution, and it will never work. The Japanese figured this out 400 years ago. Another concept, Wabi-Sabi, the beauty of impermanence, the beauty of imperfection, the beauty of things that are incomplete. This is the direct philosophical opposite of American upgrade culture, the idea that everything you own right now is just a placeholder for something better. When you internalize Wabi-Sabi, something shifts. You stop consuming to reach a finish line that doesn't exist. You start noticing what you already have. So the takeaway is simple, right? Embrace emptiness. Find beauty in imperfection. Own less stuff. Actually, no. That's still not it. There's one more thing. The thing Japanese minimalists never talk about in English. And it's the only reason any of this works. Japanese minimalists don't own fewer things because they like having less. They own fewer things because they know exactly who they are, and everything that doesn't serve that identity is just noise. Jake doesn't have too much stuff. Jake doesn't know who he is without his stuff. That's not a storage problem. That's an identity problem, and no organizing system fixes that. The Japanese have a concept called Ikigai. Loosely, your reason for getting out of bed. When you have Ikigai, a real one, not a Pinterest quote, something changes. You don't need things to signal who you are. You don't need to upgrade to prove you've arrived. You don't need to stay busy to feel like you matter, because you already know where you're going. Minimalism isn't the point. Ikigai is the point. Minimalism is just what happens naturally when you find it. So the Japanese don't ask, what should I get rid of? They ask, does this help me become the person I'm trying to be? One question, applied to your things, applied to your schedule, applied to your relationships. That's it. That's the whole philosophy. There's one more concept worth knowing, Mottainai. Don't waste what has value. Not just physical objects. Your time has value. Your attention has value. The Sunday night you spent doom scrolling instead of doing the one thing that actually makes you feel alive, that's Mottainai. Here's the only practical challenge I'll give you. For the next 7 days, every time you feel the urge to buy something or fill a gap in your schedule, pause for 48 hours first. Not to save money, not to be a minimalist, just to ask, what am I actually trying to get from this? Jake didn't clean out his apartment. Jake found one thing, just one, that made him lose track of time, and he started protecting that time like it was the most important meeting of his week. That was his first step. They don't own less because they're poor. They own less because they know exactly where they're rich. One question for you. In your life, what are you holding on to because it genuinely matters to you? And what are you holding on to because you're afraid of the empty space it would leave? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one.